Oh, it's the return of the wild style fashionist smashing hits. Make it hard to adapt to this. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. On this 12th day of July, 2026, I have missed you. I hope you are doing well. Oh, we have so much to talk about today. My name is Luke Thomas. Thank you so much for joining me. Normally, I do these right after the fights are over, a post-fight show. Sometimes I do a watch along with it, but I was on vacation the last couple of weeks. I am now home, as you can see. It is good to be back in Estados Unidos, Los Estados Unidos, pardon me. Although I had a wonderful time I was in Colombia, which I'm sure it comes as a great surprise to many of you. In any event, no one cares about that, but I am back now, happy to be with you. So today we're going to do this right now at about 1 or so in the afternoon. And of course, what are we going to discuss? UFC 329. There is just an absolutely, I mean, it's kind of funny, right? The fight didn't go, what was it, 69 seconds in the end in the main event, but there actually is an enormous amount to discuss relative to that. So first of all, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being patient, even though I wasn't really around to upload and I took some time away. So I appreciate that. If you'd be so kind, give the video a thumbs up, hit subscribe if you haven't. And more importantly, when we do these post-fight shows, I'm going to give you some analysis, and then I would like to do a bit of a Q&A. And if you would be so kind, you certainly do not have to, but if you'd like to participate, and it's a great way to support the channel, you can fire something into the super chat. And it goes a long way. Yeah. All right. Well, as I indicated, just an absolutely enormous amount to get to. The future of Conor McGregor. What does the UFC do next with Max Holloway? Paddy Pimblett being the biggest winner on the night. We have quite a bit to get to. So without further ado, let's get this party started, shall we? Now, one small piece of business to attend to. You know what time it is. Yes. Look who's here. The perfect gene. Boys and girls, before we talk about UFC 329, and believe me, I got to talk about our friends at the Perfect Gene. You guys know they're going to be with us long-term here, and I love this partner. Their jeans actually fit me, which is rare for a big dude like me, 6'4", about 270 pounds, and they're comfortable and they look great. And by the way, not for nothing, my wife loves them. The Perfect Gene has just absolutely nailed how to do this the right way. Excuse me. They have the look and the feel of real jeans, but they move with you. They stretch where you need them to stretch. They don't feel stiff or restrictive. And honestly, they're the most comfortable jeans I've ever owned. That is absolutely not hyperbole. So that's the pitch, donks. They look great, they fit great, and they feel great. Here's what you're going to do. Get the Perfect Gene for 15% off with the code LukeLive15. That's all one word, LukeLive15 at theperfectgene.nyc/LukeLive15. That's theperfectgene.nyc/LukeLive15 and use the code LukeLive15, LukeLive15 for 15% off. Check the link in the description and pinned comment and go get yourself a pair. Trust me on this one. All right. Big thanks to our friends at the Perfect Gene. Let's talk UFC 329. So UFC 329 is in the books. This, by the way, set the record for the all-time greatest. I should say greatest is quite, not maybe the right, not right. Not the right word. Highest gate ever. This took place at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. The attendance was reported at 20,078 with a total gate of 26,430,566. That makes it number one. McGregor has 3 of the all-time 4 biggest gates in UFC history. Okay. I want to say something first up front, 2 things up front. One, I thought that in general, it was building towards a pretty strong night because the co-main event was actually even shorter than the main event, but it was so dramatic in what happened that you felt like you were still kind of building. And then the main event just immediately fizzled. It just immediately fizzled. So While the main event certainly did not deliver, and I'm not going to argue that it did, I do think, though, that overall the event had a lot of positivity to it in terms of the action that you got. It had 11 finishes on the card, which is not the record, but it's tied for, like, I think second or third most all time with some other cards along the way. So, I mean, a productive, action-packed card. And I'm just going to say this too: I thought the Brandon Royval Loney Kavanaugh fight was, I mean, primo stuff. So that's number one. Number two, I am going to work on a video about this separately. So I'm not going to dwell on this particular fact for this moment, although I think it's just important to really say outright. I thought, well, I'm not sure. Surprise would not be the right word. The way in which media, particularly sports, and then even more particularly MMA media, decided that they were just not going to engage with the reality of who Conor McGregor is and what he has done from a conduct standpoint, including, but certainly not even limited to, being held liable for sexual assault in the Nikita Hand case in 2024. And by the way, folks, forget about this. He lost his appeal on that so badly that there is still an ongoing investigation into both the people who said that they had heard something related to Nikita Hand that was going to be exonerating evidence, and they withdrew it all at the last minute. Those two people are being investigated, as is McGregor himself. That is ongoing. That has not been closed. The way in which they decided that that was just not even going to be relevant. And again, there can be a range of different, there is a conversation to be had that all of us have to have related to this, which is, what do we do with someone who has not merely been accused of these things, but then held liable to a different degrees? Again, it's not a criminal court, but within the judicial system itself, like, what do we have to say about that? There is a conversation to be had about that. What those declarations end up being is up to you ultimately. The thing that drove me insane watching the coverage was that they just decided that that part of the conversation wouldn't even be entertained, that it had no role whatsoever, which is just pure abdication of what the job actually is. If you can't get that right, you can't get anything right. There's really no other way to say that. If you can't even, again, what declaration you would like to make after the fact, there are a range of them that are at least possible. But that the impulse to not even have a conversation about it is so nakedly an abdication of responsibility, and just also sort of a profoundly evil kind of thing. I lost a lot of respect for people last week, quite a bit, actually. I would say, for a lot of people. And I want to be clear about this too. You know, it's not like any of us have it. I should say, for me personally, you know, I've interviewed Mike Tyson. And when I interviewed Mike Tyson, I wasn't even thinking about, you know, the rape case that he had in the 90s. I attribute that both to the passage of time, as well as my own, frankly, I don't know if ignorance is the right word, but lack of being attuned to the things that are actually important probably played a role. Although I do also think that the fact that he went to jail creates a bit of a different. If the state asks you to pay a penalty by virtue of imprisonment, and once you pay it, that to me is substantively different than never having to face those consequences to begin with. There is something to be said for that. And if you can't get a license to fight in this country, I really don't know what you can do. So it's not like I've got a perfect record in this regard either, and I can look at myself in the mirror and say that. But again, if someone wanted to have a conversation about it, there was really none going on. I mean, this was, 20 plus years after the fact. So, it's hard to go back to it in that sense. But this is not 20 plus years after the fact. This is 2, and this is actually his first comeback fight. A conversation around it at this particular moment is relevant. And they just decided they weren't going to have one. Shameful. Truly, truly shameful. Shameful ass shit, dude. Really, just no defense of that whatsoever. And I know that there's a lot of online agitators who want you to believe that the fact that they want you to believe that this Nikita Hand thing is, all set up as some kind of hit job, whereas follow anyone who went to trial and in that case and covered it. I had Frank Graney, one of the lead crime reporters in all of Irish media here on this channel. Like, dude, he got whooped at trial. He got whooped. Like, it wasn't close. And the fact that there's just no even attempt at trying to have an understanding about this is really a stain on everyone's character. All right. Now, with that preamble out of the way, there is something to be said because fights did happen last night and they do create significance. And for that, analysis is owed. So let's start with the main event. Max Holloway defeats Conor McGregor at 109 of round number 1. Literally on the first strike, really, that he attempted in the entire fight. It happened to be a kick, but the first strike, he plants on he's obviously southpaw. He plants on his right leg. It's like a jumping switch kick, and then he jumps, switches, and I think maybe it was a scissors kick, and then lands on the right to bring himself down, and it kind of buckles. And looked like in real time, it looked like he kind of knee slid and maybe lost his balance, but didn't hurt himself. But then, he tried it again, and I think the whole thing was fucked up, and then he got taken to the ground, or at least he fell to the ground. Holloway gets on top and is landing like really almost unobstructed ground and pound. He eventually gets back to the feet and he's limping, and then referee Mike Beltran just waves it at 69 seconds of the fight. An absolute calamity for Conor McGregor. Let me tell you what last night represented for him. The idea that people won't pay big money to see him again is 1 billion% false. Understand, and I made this point on this channel many times, but it really is important to keep in mind, passion and fandom in ways that show up materially, particularly at the box office in combat sports, these things die hard. They die very slowly. They die hard. To that end, Kimbo Slice, it turned out, was literally on death's door when he was in Bellator, and he remains to this day the highest rated. Let's say it outright. Kimbo Slice is the biggest star Bellator's ever had, and the real peak of Kimbo Slice came long before that. He was on quite literally death's door during that time, and he's still the biggest by a million miles. Like the popularity that he maintained over time, was it as big as his prime? No, but it was still pretty damn big. And obviously, Kimbo Slice did not have even a fraction of the decorated career that Conor McGregor has, for the most part, had. If Conor McGregor comes back in 2027 to compete, it will be big. Will it be this big? I don't know, but it will still be very big. And surely, if he boxes in BKFC, that's going to do record numbers for them. And I'd also maintain that if he ends up, let's say, boxing Jake Paul on Netflix, it is absolutely insane to think that that's not going to draw a significant number. How big? I don't know. We'll have to sort of see at the time. I'm just trying to point out the idea of him as a box office attraction just evaporating overnight. No, that's really not going to happen. But what I can say happened last night was an extinguishment of the flame of the Mystic Mac identity. That is gone. And that is never coming back. The whole idea that a guy can just manufacture magic, the whole idea that a guy can just call his shots and make it happen, like that hot run he was on, through Poirier and through Mendez and through all those guys. The idea that you could recreate that and maintain that kind of, that spirit, that flame. No, you can. I mean, yes, he did it for a while, but like, if there was the lingering hope, I think, by McGregor supporters and maybe even just to a degree casual fans alike. Although there's going to be obviously some split on that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But, there's certainly a sizable portion of the population, let's say, who watches fights and watched this fight that wanted to see if there was still a little McGregor magic left. There is not. It is gone. It is affirmatively completely gone. Again, one more time, that's not to say he can't be, and I'm absolutely certain he will continue to be a box office attraction, nor is it a claim that he can't win fights, particularly if he goes to boxing where the integrity of his knees and perhaps other orthopedic concerns are not, they still could be relevant in boxing, certainly, but they're not going to be as relevant in boxing as they are in, a grappling or wrestling, or even, leaving your feet kind of based sport like MMA. So this is not like, oh, he'll never win again, he'll never be popular again. No, he definitely will continue to be popular, and he will certainly, I should say, there's a decent likelihood he could win again, depending on how things go. But the idea that someone can just be electric on command, the idea that somebody can just do something so special and just conjure it up like some, necromancer or something, like, no, that is completely, utterly finished. Gone. If those hot streaks that you see in combat sports like that, I mean, somebody, like Habib can have an undefeated record, or even St. Pierre, he had losses along the way, but he would have long winning streaks. But dude, look at some of those fights. Like, he crawled out of those fights on his hands and knees sometimes. In particular, the Johnny Hendricks fight. And I realize there's asterisks around that, pre-USADA, but you get my point. Like, they don't just go in there and just have magic. Sometimes they have magic, and then accumulatively they can do something really profoundly special. But just doing, unexpected, shocking, amazing things like that, and doing them in succession, or just being able to come back out of that and return to that kind of a rhythm when you look like, you're 10 years older than you actually are, dude, it's over. It is over. It is affirmatively, absolutely. It was probably over before last night, but last night was the absolute coffin nails in that idea. That guy is at one. You will see him again. He may win again. He may do big box office ratings again, or numbers. That guy is never walking through the door again. It'll never happen. It cannot happen. He'll be 38 in 2 days. Right. He'll be 38 in 2 days. He looked to me not out of shape per se, because like Rob Whittaker looked to me like a little heavy. Obviously, it's a different scenario. Conor was going, I guess, up a weight class too, depending on how you want to define the terms of time. But Whittaker was going up to 205 for the first time, 20-pound jump. He looked a little doughy, even though he got the job done. And I thought in the end, not too badly. But, Conor looked reasonably in shape in that way, but he didn't look like he had the same kind of fluidity of movement. His face looks puffy. His hair looks noticeably a little bit thinner. There's like the amount of just aging that naturally has occurred, obviously, but then how that's been magnified by the way in which he's been living, and it was just so on display. It was immediately visible. I mean, guys, like, you are where you are in life with aging, and this is something I know a lot of young men don't really appreciate. Certainly, when I was a young guy, I didn't really appreciate this, but like, yes, you can be an in-shape person at 37, of course. And sometimes if you are really, really good about it, you can have great success in sports, professional sports, late into your 30s, but you just can't do what he's done, especially with all the other issues he had even during his prime with injury durability. You recall he went into the Mendez fight with really, really messed up knee, among a number of other things. Live the way he's been living, and then just expect that your body and your integrity is going to your tools of the trade are just not going to be rusted and weathered and lesser than. He looked diminished to me, bigger as a 170er than a 55er, or certainly a 45er, but greatly, greatly, greatly diminished. And more to that point, like, he didn't look to me like he had any kind of fire within his belly either. I know he was talking about that at the press conference, but then you just look at his body and his energy. Like, that's what I mean, dude. You are where you are in life. And sometimes these powers of biology overtake you by surprise, or bring you to a place you never expected, and you can't really fake your way out of it. Like, people all the time, like, they call me Unc and I got gray hair. I am where I am, and I'm not really trying to fight it. Like, I had my turn to be in my 20s. I had my turn to be in my 30s. I am where I am. You cannot fight this. There's a certain degree of just kind of acceptance along that. And then that recognition also has to be informing what decisions you make with your life. Like, he honestly shouldn't even be fighting. Like, he made enough money before 20 or through 2017 to like not have to do any of this shit again. And yet here he is. There was, to me, it's seemingly a lack of recognition about him understanding where he is in life and what place he has arrived and what he's done to do it. There are questions about whether or not he was injured before he ever got to the octagon. To that end, Conor denies it. You can go on his social media vociferously. Oscar Willis, a friend of MK, said he had seen Conor train like what, all week or something, or for quite some time, and that there was just no indication there was a problem. You can look at the warm-up footage of the back room before getting going, and it didn't look amiss to me. I realize that there is a question of how he just appeared emotionally lesser than walking out and then taking off his shoes. It looked like he was stumbling, but if you watch that video, it's the other knee that looks like he gets a little hurt, not the one that actually got hurt, which was his right knee. So I don't know if he had a pre-existing injury. There's a lot of rumor mongering, but that doesn't seem to me, as of the time of this video that I'm making it now, that does not appear to me to be the strongest argument. The strongest argument is that this guy already had injury problems before any of his departure time really took place. Since then has lived insanely hard. And New York Times reporting that not only did he take HGH and anabolic steroids to get over the leg injury, but then took it for some time after, because according to their reporting, like the way that it made him feel, that's what they reported. To add on, God only knows what the drug use has done to his body more generally. I mean, I want you to think about something. Think about how many, and I'm not being facetious with this. Think about how many hangovers this guy has powered through. Like, and what this does to your organs, what this does to your brain, what this does to your connective tissue over time, to say nothing of what the anabolic steroids and the HGH could, again, according to New York Times reporting anyway, what that all does to the integrity of connective tissue, and moreover, just your ability for your body to function properly. Like, there is a bill in life due if you wish to live that way. And that bill just came due. Yeah, you can say it's dumb luck or whatever, misfortune, however you wish to describe it. The first one that he threw. Yeah, dude, the first one that he threw. He looked to me for the first time truly old and enfeebled. That's what he looked like to me. He looked fucking old. As an old dude, I welcome to the club, fella. Like, you're old now. You're fucking old now. And you just can't do what you used to do, particularly with that amount of time off, particularly coming off catastrophic injury, particularly with, again, according to the New York Times reporting, anabolic drug use and HGH, to say nothing of what the drugs of recreation have done, to say nothing of how much, again, we're talking about the margin of error with your athletic preparation being so important. All the times he's probably fucked up his sleep and done God only knows what, drinking all night, and to say, among other things, powering through all that. How could you possibly think you're going to arrive at 38 years of age, get in the octagon and try something like that and not realize that's an enormous risk factor? He is old and broken now. He had one injury on his left leg, and now he's got an injury on his right. And I think he had the previous one, obviously, when he tore his ACL, remember, against Max. And then he had the fucked up knee injury against Mendez and a million other things. The pinky toe that pulled him out of the Chandler fight, although that's sort of more relatively recent. But he's had a whole host of problems. You're going to add all of that, plus all that time off, plus all that injury, the breaking of the shin bone, and then, all the things we've mentioned, and you're going to go out there and just assume your body's going to respond, to say nothing of the fact that, again, he didn't even seem to have the same emotional, what's the word I'm looking for, connectivity to the moment. All of that seemed gone. Mystic Mac is never, ever, ever walking through that door. If you want to see him, you need to fire up Fight Pass. That's the only place that's ever going to live. That or your memory. It cannot happen. He has been injury prone for years, and it looks to me like dude, literally, this guy has, in those last two fights, I guess he didn't have to get stretchered out this time, but has had to get the fight ended due to, at a bare minimum, significant orthopedic injury. I would call the one that happened the previous time in the third Poirier fight, I would just call that straight up catastrophic. That was a catastrophic injury. This one is not catastrophic in the same way, but is a significant, debilitating, potentially even further career-altering athletic injury. Se acabó. It's over. It is over. That thing, that whole identity is completely finished. Because of course it has. A thing like that. This is why it's important to, like, if you are a fight fan, like, people will put whatever contribution into their own fandom that they care about, but like, if you don't catch the things that are meaningful happening when they're actually happening, and you want to get it late, or you want it to be, recreated later in some kind of a way, it's basically a fool's errand. You gotta, it's like watching a meteor fall. You got to catch it while it's falling, once it impacts on the ground, now it's over. And that's what it felt like watching that to me, in terms of a timeline for a return, certainly not this year. He was talking about April of 2027 as the second fight left on his UFC deal. He's got one more, right? Let's talk about that for a second. So it's July. So let's see. We have August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. I mean, it's potentially possible he could be back by April. I don't know exactly the nature of the injury. Some have said it's meniscus tear. Some have said ACL. We really don't know. Maybe April is still in play. I suspect it's probably not. I suspect it's within maybe the calendar year. Sorry, not the calendar year. 12 months. It's within 12 months. I think that might be possible. But even then, who's to say? It's entirely possible that that he'll be 38 in 2 days. That he'll miss age 38 100%, and you won't see him till 39. And God only knows who he'd even fight at that point. What would even make sense at that point? I don't even know. So I don't want to. This one's a little wishier washier without a full medical diagnosis and more of an understanding of what has happened. But suffice to say that I saw Chael getting shit from people today because he said, I don't think the UFC is going to want to re-sign him after this. And I saw people being like, oh, Chael's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I bet he does. I bet Chael is saying that because he's saying that based on conversations he's having with people, but yes, his own judgment about like what the value of this relationship might be long-term, but also to that point, what the UFC might be considering. And also just to consider this too, if they were going to re-sign him to a long-term deal with this new money from Paramount Plus, they would have done it already. Conor also wants out of this deal. Like this idea that like UFC is going to go hat in hand to Conor, especially this version of Conor. They already got the very best of Conor. They already got it. They got it. They got every part of it. They got half of his fucking Mayweather purse. They already got it. Like whatever is left, how good is that? It's not that good. This is a very, very, very diminished product at this point. So I don't know why people were on Chael. I think between Conor wanting just to get out because he has more flexibility going to Netflix and boxing Jake Paul and making more money that way, between that and then also UFC just looking at this and being like, dude, what is left of this guy? He literally can't even make it. He barely makes it a minute in the fight because he just can't stay. He's just breaking apart. He's Samuel L. Jackson, like Mr. Glass. I forget the exact which movie was that. Whatever movie that was, from M. Night Shyamalan. I cannot remember the title. That's just where we're at with this. So, like when he comes back at the earliest next year, but it could be late 2027, even 2028. And I don't know who the fuck he would fight. And I absolutely think that there's no way he fights in the UFC after that. I'd be shocked for him to do that. He can't, much less win at this level. I don't even know if he can stay healthy in the sport anymore. With boxing, at least you're kind of rooted to the ground. You have shoes. Again, you can tear your ACL doing that too. I mean, that happens, but the risk factors are certainly lower. I just think like this was as clear a crystal ball look into the future about, I think Conor had already made up his mind and perhaps UFC did as well. But if they didn't, how the hell do you sign a guy like that to a long-term deal? Oh, a Netflix 1 or 2 off. Okay, I could see that. A Diaz, Jake Paul boxing extravaganza. Okay, I mean, I could see some two fight deal, sure. 1 or 2 fight deal. I mean, I didn't realize he's involved with BKFC, but like, a 1 or 2 BKFC fights. All right, you can sort of buy that. But like in the UFC, you can't buy that he can do anything anymore. It's not of any kind of relative importance. He is enfeebled, as I kind of indicated. So I cannot imagine that UFC was exactly pleased with the way last night went, because they didn't get much out of it and they charged an enormous gate for it. But as I've said before, it's a monopoly, and extraction is the name of the game. Let's talk about some of the other losers last night. Max Holloway is certainly not a loser by any stretch of the imagination. He won the fight, technically speaking. He probably got paid a princely sum to do it, and he took no fucking damage. Like, that's pretty great. However, and I love Max. This is not a hardcore criticism, but like Max afterwards being like, hey, we can run it back. Let's get this money. I was like, I mean, people probably don't want to hear that right now, right? Because they just paid a shitload of money for nothing. I understand the impulse to say it. Again, I think Max is a great guy, but that didn't quite land for me. But the real one that stands out is Nate Diaz. I think this is a bit of a problem for him. Now, again, depending on what the medical diagnosis is, it may not be that big of a deal. And it's not to say that once Conor extricates himself or this deal expires with the UFC, that they can't find a way to make the fight and that it still wouldn't do big numbers again on Netflix, no matter what. And maybe if it's even a boxing fight, who knows? But the amount of like rehab that Conor's going to have to do, and how long that might take, and how much that might push back when he can take his second fight, which means it pushes back Nate Diaz's ability to get a fight. And how old is Nate Diaz today? So let's see. Nate Diaz is, excuse me, I'm trying to find this number. Christ on crutches. Here we go. Nate Diaz is 41, but April 16th of next year, he'll be 42. So he'll at least be 42 by then. Not ideal in terms of the weight that could happen if he ever even is able to physically return to action, which I suspect that he would be, but one never knows. I mean, it adds a layer of uncertainty and delayed timeline that I think they were probably hoping wouldn't happen. So I don't think he comes out of this necessarily feeling a whole lot better about the way that the last fight went against Mike Perry, and then now waiting on McGregor, and then that might even take longer than expected, which at that point, how much does that diminish what's available and make even showing up and looking halfway decent all the more difficult? That probably is not a great thing for him either. I think that to me stands out. But like, honestly, the biggest loser by a million miles, and of course this is no great revelation, but it's worth just sort of discussing the depth of it. It's Conor McGregor. When Ilia Topuria lost at the White House, I had made a point. And by the way, Khamzat losing, Poatan losing, Ilia losing, Conor losing and badly getting injured at the time. Although, you could say the same about Ilia, I suppose. Like, they're on a bit of a run here. Islam fights next month. Can you imagine if Islam loses that fight? Holy shit. What I wanted to say was, though, like when Ilia lost, the thing that stood out to me was how profound and deep the loss itself was. You lost your undefeated record. You lost your belt. You got really, really, really beat up. You lost your standing in pound for pound. I mean, obviously, there's reputational damage that goes along with it. You lost out on the McGregor sweepstakes. You lost. I suppose they could still do that, but they won't at this point. You certainly lost out on the Islam Makhachev sweepstakes. Like, there's a lot that's lost there. That was a really, really bad loss. This is also a pretty bad loss for all the reasons I've kind of already mentioned. But on top of it, the thing that I noticed was Conor McGregor, as I mentioned, still a box office attraction, but he did not have the same pull on the fan base anymore. Now, understanding what I'm talking about, relative to virtually every other fighter, with some exception, I suppose, yes, it's still very high. Relative to what it used to be for himself, it was a pretty clear drop off. He wasn't getting the pop that other people that he used to get to the same degree. Max was trying to tell the crowd, give it up for Conor, and there was like a smattering of, I mean, like they weren't that big on him. They would show him on screen backstage, and there would be some yelling for it, but not like before. The Irish certainly did not travel for him at all this time, and I honestly feel like that was a bit of the glue. Like a lot of the things that Conor had been running from kind of all came crashing down on him last night. Not so much the long arm of the law in that way, but all of the sort of karmic debt he'd been running up, that bill came due last night. And all of the friction that he's had in his life, that bill kind of came due last night. And the hard living he's been doing, that bill kind of came due last night. And his distance from the game and what that's done to his status within it and the celebrity within it, some of that bill came due last night. Like that was also a real bad loss for him. And now, one more time, he did all this recovery, all that time off, again, according to the New York Times, did all those drugs, and now he has to go right back into rehab and surgery again. That's a bad loss, dude. That's a real bad loss. He didn't get CTE so much from this one, or beat up in that particular kind of way. But I don't know, folks. Like the depth of how he lost to me seems unavoidable in kind of inventorying. And once you begin to do that, you're like, wow, this was really quite profound. He had a tweet to that effect, I believe, saying that he's in a dark place, and he's like, I think he described it as quite literally hell. Now he also has pledged to come back and have another comeback. I mean, yes, I think he probably will, have a literal comeback again. But, what is that going to be? What can that be at this point? Again, relative to his previous highs. I don't know how to answer that question. So that was really, really bad. And, I don't know. I'll leave the last part alone. I think there's definitely people out there dunking on Conor because of what happened outside of the cage, particularly with the Nikita Hand case, which I will say, I think that him having to face that is, rather than having to go to jail, or I suspect if he did both, if he did one, he'd still get the latter rather. But the point I'm trying to make is there's a lot of people dunking on him and really taking great pleasure in his demise and injury. And I don't know if I'm like, oh, go get injured. I don't know about that. I don't have the least bit of sympathy for him. I don't. Nothing. Zero. Absolutely zero. As I mentioned, one, he's already had enough money to stop doing this, and live extremely comfortably. That's one. And then the other part too is I understand something. Look, all the stuff he's done, how much of it is just the most insane thing you've ever seen. Understand something. So I made a list here. April 5th, 2018. This is the Dolly bus incident. December 9th, 2018. This is the Beacon Hotel in Dublin where the Nikita Hand incident essentially begins, right? And that whole process. March of 2019, he was arrested outside the Fontainebleau for smashing that dude's cell phone. Not the biggest deal, but not getting out of the way of himself. April of 2019, that's when he punched the old dude in the dome piece. October of 2019, a second woman complained in Dublin that McGregor had sexually assaulted her in a car outside of a Dublin pub. He denied it. Nothing ever happened, but he certainly was accused of it. Certainly in September of 2020, out in Corsica, France, he was detained and questioned for 2 days over a complaint of attempted sexual assault and indecent exposure. And then in April of 2021, the prosecutor's office did drop the case eventually, but he still was held up in that particular regard. October of 2021 in Rome, Italy, an Italian DJ said he was attacked by him, broke his nose at a party. He's actually still under investigation. March 2022 in West Dublin, he had 6 driving offenses at that time. By the way, again, not the biggest deal, but sort of like a part of the overall issue. July of 2022 in Ibiza, Spain, an Irish woman alleged McGregor punched her and kicked her aboard his yacht, causing her to jump into the sea. That's a fun little one. And by the way, again, there's previous incidents opposed to that fact of some of these women getting bricks thrown through their door or their car set on fire after the fact. You have the Casilla Center incident, which I know ultimately resulted in the case being withdrawn by the person filing it. We don't know if a settlement was reached or not, but take that for what it is worth. Let's see. What else do we have here? Some of the Dublin riot stuff he's being investigated for in terms of like inciting issues there. He was, of course, in November of 2024, he had found that he had assaulted and raped Nikita Hand. Again, it's a civil jury, not a criminal one. And then the perjury investigation, which I mentioned, is still ongoing. By the way, he's now being sued by Nikita Hand for, quote, malicious abuse of court process over the, quote, entirely concocted, end quote, affidavits. And as of February 2026, the High Court was set to assess damages against the neighbors who, after they failed to respond. So these are the people that claim that they had evidence that Nikita Hand was somewhere that she claimed she was, and they're like, oh yeah, she was. We heard them, and then they were set to testify, and then the whole thing blew up that day, and now they're being investigated for whether or not they were lying the whole time. Like look at the weight of this. Look at the weight of this. This is a very difficult person to have sympathy for. And then to say nothing of, even if none of the legal malfeasance had taken place, just the fact of like how someone had lived, what the reasonable expectation would be athletically to perform, and then to go out there and then have this. Like, I just think that to wrap up on Conor for the moment, I just think that there's a lot of people out there, a lot of fight fans. In my era of MMA, but just hear me out. We got enough pageantry in so many places that I'm not as starved for it, right? And I think what's ended up happening is there's a lot of fight fans now who get in the Apex era who are absolutely starved for high-level magic moments in MMA. And, there's a question about whether you got that with the White House card. Certainly the fights were great and the production was high level, but of course, like, you're willing to just look the other way as they buddy up to a fucking fascist and authoritarian right-leaning guy whose ICE Gestapo thugs are quite literally just a fucking executing people in the street, to say nothing of all the other problems that are happening. But even if you want to look the other way on that one, what would be the argument to look the other way again, or not even have a conversation about what had happened here and to what extent all of that is in play? They're just willing to ignore those things because they don't want to complicate the fun that they have with MMA, which I understand wanting to have the fun with MMA. I've had a lot of fun with MMA, but I just think they're so starved. They're absolutely so starved that they want to blot out everything other than just give me just mainline Mystic Mac right here. Just mainline that shit. They just want to feel that drug. And it just doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. You got to watch it when it happens, as a starting point. And then once this person is in a later stage of their life, and not only just a later stage of their life, a much more complicated stage of their life, and then still trying to mainline it. In order to do that, you have to do this and walk around like this, to me is just, I feel bad for modern fans that have to resort to these kinds of, ostrich-like avoidance tactics. It didn't used to be so complicated, at least not to that same degree. All right. Who should Max fight next? There's an argument to be made that Max versus Paddy is the fight to make because neither of them had fights, right? Like, neither of them had fights. Max fought for 69 seconds. Paddy fought for 52. We'll talk about the Paddy fight in just a second. You could do that. Max says he doesn't want to come back till 2027. he's still chasing the trilogy. I think that's a real bad idea. Michael Chandler's pretty great proof that like waiting for Conor McGregor and his timelines, probably not the best idea. Like if the fight falls in your lap because the timing works out and you want to make money, that makes more sense to me, right? But just, oh, I'm going to wait for that guy. I'm going to wait for that bus to show up. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. And unfortunately, he has no mandate here because he didn't really beat Conor McGregor in the sense that we understand it, where you were superior, you physically imposed on this guy. It's none of that. It's none of that. So the Paddy fight to me would be okay. I'm not really interested in a Charles rematch. You could do the Gaethje fight again. Gaethje's another guy here. We talked about Nate Diaz kind of being messed up off this. Pardon me. I wonder if this hastens Gaethje's retirement. I think he was kind of waiting around to see if Conor was going to be around and wins. And they can we can make a big fight now. And then this whole thing goes down. And so where is he? There's part of me is that in that sense, I would say, let me pull the rankings up here. Who am I not thinking about? All right. Oh, the Ilya fight. That's the one that makes the most sense. Oh my God, how did I forget that one? That's an interesting one. Ilya, by the way, coming in off of, for Paddy is the one you could do. And, you know what? I'll save the Ilya conversation for the Paddy fight. But for Max specifically, could you do Arman Tsarukyan? Would Arman even want that one? I don't even know if that makes sense. Charles, I don't want to run back. Max is sitting at 4. And then Benoit, Saint-Denis is 5, and Gamrot is 6. He's not going to want those. Moicano at 7, Killing Saul killed at 8. So I think he's just going to wait around and see what materializes in 2027. I think it's a little hard to match make in that particular regard. All right, with that in mind, let's talk about the biggest winner at UFC 329. And because the answer to that question about who the biggest winner is, it's clearly Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett defeats Benoit Saint-Denis via technical submission. Wikipedia is calling it a Peruvian necktie. It's not a Peruvian necktie. I mean, maybe it's a modified version of a Peruvian necktie. The Peruvian necktie is basically like up on the throat and then one leg over the back of the neck and then one leg over the back, and it's kind of this push-pull situation. That's not exactly what this one was. This one was, so the lock was not behind the elbow, the armpit. The lock was on the other side of the neck, which makes it a darce. It was like a power darce almost. And he threw a leg over the top so that Benoit couldn't really roll through and then maybe use that inversion to loosen it and then escape. Devastating. Dude, Paddy fucking Pimblett. I have a lot to say about BSD, but I got to give Paddy Pimblett credit. He got his ass whooped in that Gaethje fight, and he was questioning himself. Then Gaethje goes out there and beats Ilya, and by Paddy's own admission, totally rejuvenates him spiritually and mentally. Goes out there and didn't have to do much, but did have to show that, the reason why this fight is important for Paddy is because people have kind of clowned him. He was coming off the loss. He obviously does have gaps in his game. That's not unfair to say. It's true of any fighter. It's definitely true of him too. We've all seen it. There are gaps in his fucking game. But what last night showed, and the reason why he's the biggest winner was in part the main event fizzled, but the other part was this fight showed if you take this guy lightly, you're in fucking trouble, dude. You can't do it. You can have criticisms of him. You can say he can't beat X or Y. All right, and we can have that debate, or maybe the record already shows it. Fine. But what BSD did was disrespect him. Not so much verbally, but by the way he fought and paid for it dearly. That fight is important for Paddy because it was him finally shutting up people who think he can just be, he's the easy out in this whole thing. And again, there are matchup wise, there are cases where I think he's going to be at a real significant disadvantage. But the amount, dude, if you fight the way BSD fought against a guy as good as Paddy is in that particular regard and as ready as he was in that moment, you're gonna pay. you're going to pay dearly. You can't think he is just some other guy you're going to walk right through. And the speed and the efficiency and the I mean, that choke was sealed like a bank vault. Shows you anyone taking him lightly at this point, you do so at your extraordinary peril. He has now entered a stage where that is just not even relevant anymore. Criticisms, fine. Real limits, they're observable. But you're not going to just walk in there and do what you want to him, not by a million fucking miles. Not anymore. Not anymore. And I think we can all kind of see that. He didn't have to do much, but the thing that he did, having the presence of mind, knowing BSD was going to shoot in some kind of a way and that there was going to be a submission opportunity available as a consequence. If not that one, then he probably had some other ones planned later in the grappling chain. But for that one to be materializing and then to sink it and to do so in an unforgiving way, to me was a bit of a fuck you to people like me and other people out there who have been kind of saying he's a bit of an easy out in that regard. You know, he's not. You got to take this guy seriously. Sorry, I'm going to have my watermelon drink. You got to take this guy seriously. You absolutely have to. And that, to me, was why the last night was so significant. Yes, it was dramatic because it was the first takedown, first offensive action almost, basically, that BSD tried to take and that he was put to sleep for it. It's just what it represented. It represented to me a goodbye to, oh, well, this is just, you know, the guy lucky to be here. This is a guy who got, you know, dropped by, what was the guy's name? Vendramini, whoever he fought early in his UFC run, you know, something like that. That's so good. It was the end of that era, you know, in terms of both how well the Gaethje fight aged, his own toughness, and then just how devastatingly, you know, automatic his choke was. Automatic and sealed. I mean, there was no daylight in that choke, no fat on it whatsoever. He's deadly, dude. He's deadly. In the right context, he is deadly. And the reason why I think he's the biggest winner is because to go from getting beat up like that on the first event, the first event on Paramount, right? The UFC 324, to getting beat up so badly on that one, to then come back here and have this emphatic, unequivocal, you know, devastating of a win is such a massive boost to his fortunes, both in terms of like what the matchmaking may itself offer, as well as just reputationally. That's the biggest winner on this card. There's some other big winners on this card, but Paddy is, to me, the guy who had the biggest delta, the biggest change from where he was to now where he is. I think that belongs to Paddy. Let me say, though, that Benoit Saint-Denis, dude, look at me, BSD. What the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? Oh, my God. This one, to me, Danny Segura and I were talking about this on MK, and Danny argued, not without good reason, that BSD has made better decisions about just trying to power through things relative to how he used to do it. And I think in general, there is some evidence for that. But the thing that I kind of held on to was that, yeah, but I don't know if he's doing it enough. And last night, dude, oh my God, bro. Oh my God. That was first team all donk. Boy, if you're trying to make the all donk list, if BSD is not on your Mount Rushmore, I don't know what you're doing. You cannot power your way to UFC gold through everything. It cannot be done. BSD, tries to power through everything. Oh, I'm going to power through range. I'm going to get punched in the fucking face a million times while I do it, because I'm going to eventually get my hands on you. And when I do, I'm going to get the takedown. I'm going to pass them out. I'm going to get the sub, blah, blah, blah. right? That's what he just believes. I'm just going to, I don't need to worry about how to do this part of the game correctly because I'm just going to get to the part of the game that I do really well and then I'll be fine. That is what he is thinking. Dude, that is a fucking peasant mentality. That is something that honestly, to me, is like a basic precept of frankly any kind of MMA game, but especially a grappling game where so many problems can emerge if you just try to power through things the way that he does. And I say this as someone, obviously, he's a very successful athlete, and I'm just an idiot with a microphone, but I was a heavyweight. And one of the things when I trained that was actually really important to me was to have a game where, because I was a bigger heavyweight, I was up 260, 270. You go up against other heavyweights, maybe 220, 230. I would still have a pretty big, weight advantage on them. And then, as the sparring rounds go on, that begins to materialize more and more. If you don't tell yourself you need to learn how to navigate these things technically, you're going to end up just being like, I can just use my size or whatever to get through all of this. So you have to be able to realize that, like, listen, if push comes to shove and it's the only thing you have and you do have a weight or, chin advantage or, some kind of way to just power through something, yeah, you actually might have to use it. There can be a case where you just might be forced to use it. But BSD is not that guy. BSD doesn't resort to it because nothing else is left. BSD puts it at the front of his game. At the very front of his game. I'm just going to lead with my head on this takedown, no setup, head on the outside of the hip, no less, against a guy who we knew had good submissions, and now you can realize has unforgiving ability to wrap that up completely tight within an instant. He's got a fantastic bite on his chokes. And BSD doesn't pay attention to any of this. Dude, this tells me that he doesn't have the right people sparring him. Because if you had the right kind of people sparring him who could shut that down and then make you get to a point where you're actually quite literally forced to have to think through a problem and then develop more technical setups for the, again, the advancement of range, for how you want to get into your takedown entries, what kind of takedown entries you should be even using, when in the round you should be using them. He doesn't show any consideration for any of that. How the fuck do you think you are going to win a UFC title if you're not doing that? Newsflash, you're not. You're not. It's not possible. He must have people in the gym that he can just power through. And so he just thinks, oh, I can just power through these guys basically every round, or at least once every scenario that I need. I'm just going to do that on the feet. No, you are not. No, you are not. It doesn't work. You have to have technical answers for this. BSD is a good athlete. He didn't take a beating this one. He just went out from a choke. So there's, I realize this is a terrible loss of stock for him, but it's not the end of the world in that sense. How old is BSD? He currently sits at 30. No, hardly the end of the world in that sense. But if this is all he's ever going to be, you have seen the best of it already. If he decides that I don't need to understand how to navigate range or set up takedowns or time takedowns or choose which takedowns are most important for the context that they're in, you have seen what he can do. And yes, it's fun either way, win or lose, right? He brings drama. So it's not to say there's no value in that, but he's got designs on winning a title. Brother, you're not even close. Not only do you not have the skills to navigate range, BSD looks like he doesn't think they even matter. You got to be fucking kidding me. You got to be fucking kidding me. Brother, you need to find a tougher room. Straight up. If you can just get to the positions in training you want to get to so easily that you think you can do that against people who are your top level, relatively speaking, top level peers, you're in trouble. You're absolutely 1000% in trouble. I couldn't believe that shit. Such a totally, oh, here we go. an absolutely unforgivable way to pursue a fight. Particularly, was this number one contender? No, it probably wasn't number one contender, but it's not far from number one contender. I know that Paddy just lost, and that makes it hard for him. But if BSD had gone out there and let's say really taken down Paddy effectively, passed to Mount, and either submitted him or really pounded him out from there, can you imagine like what that would have done for his stock? You'd be like, okay, man, we got a fresh entrant for the top of this division. Let's do this. Let's advance this. Like, I think for him, it could have been transformative. And he goes in there and leads with his fucking head on the outside of Paddy's hip. He doesn't even do a head inside single or something like that. You know what I mean? He didn't even do a fucking head inside single. He didn't get Paddy to open up with the punches and then, I'm going to get underneath him. Nothing like that, dude. Nothing like that. Just, you got to be kidding me, dude. This is some shit you should see at the regional level. Dead serious. This is something you should see at the regional. And even then, there can be regional level good enough where that's not even good enough. I want to be as clear as I can. I don't like getting on here and then critiquing I don't like critiquing the toughness of fighters very much. And I don't necessarily like, critiquing, especially critiquing their heart. I don't think that's very good. And even sometimes their games, I don't like critiquing it. I will absolutely make an exception here. It is not in any way whatsoever justifiable what he did if you want to be a top level lightweight, and it is absolutely the mental approach that he is taking is indefensible. Indefensible. I'm not trying to say he's a bad person. Well, he might be, but I'm not making that argument about what I saw last night. I'm just talking about the fighter competing in the octagon. There is no possible argument he could trot out today to defend that performance. Utter disregard for not merely Paddy Pimblett, but what it takes to win. Utter disregard for, frankly, what I consider to be a foundational element of any grappler's level in any context. I don't think any grappler, or, again, even striker, depending on the context. This one was wrestling. But let's just say grappling. I don't think any grappler should have a game where, if that's available to them, they can just move it through scenarios with force, unconcerned about what might happen to them, thinking it's not really relevant. A white belt shouldn't think that way. A blue belt shouldn't think that way. A purple belt shouldn't think that way. And certainly a brown and a black belt shouldn't think that way. You should never, ever, ever, ever think that way. Again, we all know you get one elite black belt. Again, we're speaking of grappling scenarios. One elite black belt versus another elite black belt. It may be the only thing that differentiates you two. You just might have to force something to get through. It can happen. But to think that it is you're so blithely unconcerned with your opponent that you're not even thinking about that. You're just sticking your head and your neck out there for a guy who was waiting to make a name off of your ass. Oh, my Lord. First team all donk. First team all donk. His stock doesn't fall just because he lost quickly. His stock falls because he has disrespect for his opponents, not as like, oh, you're a bitch. None of that. Disrespect for what it takes to win. He doesn't respect it. Flat out. There's no other way to look at that. He doesn't respect it. And as long as he doesn't respect it, that's the respect his opponents are going to show him. You're going to wake up facing the canvas or the lights. You pick. Oh, my God. I hated it. Now, for Paddy, I got to say that the Topuria fight, I think it makes some sense. Paddy's stock, I'm not going to say it's never been higher, but that was a huge boost to it last night. And Ilya's stock has definitely never been lower, right? I think the hit he took from this last fight, as I've indicated, it was terrible, terrible, terrible. Paddy, I would not favor to beat Topuria, but I think we got to put some of the disrespecting behind him. You don't have to say, oh, I think he's a world beater. Or maybe you want to make that argument. I'm just saying I'm not making it mandatory. It's not a mandatory argument that you have to make. But I think that fight, if you're going to make it, now seems like the right time. They're relatively close. One stock is down, one stock is up. It creates for interesting narrative. There's already a rivalry there. Topuria's got a lot to prove. It would be a huge fucking win for Paddy Pimblett if he was able to get something like that. It would make me have to shut my mouth, all those kinds of things. I honestly feel like that's the fight you make, and that you could main event that one without a title too. That's the kind of spot we're talking about here. Monster win for the perennially disrespected, including by people like me, Paddy Pimblett. But even I have enough respect to know you can't just be trying to, I'm just going to muscle my way through the world, bro. What the fuck was that? Oh, I hated that. All right. Mario Bautista defeats Corey Sandhagen via unanimous decision, 29-28. Now, you'll recall Sandhagen beat him the first time they fought. What was this, 2019 when they fought the first time? Yes, it was 2019. And he beat him via armbar in the first round. That was the UFC's first event in the ESPN Plus era. I was there for that one. And it was a very different fight last night. I thought that two things that were interesting to me. One, I thought Bautista was losing most of the first round. He got clipped pretty badly, and I think almost dropped. I don't know if did Fight Metric count that as a knockdown or not. No, they did not. So it didn't count as a knockdown, but he clearly got he got hit with a huge shot. But then there was this takedown to the back by Bautista on Sandhagen, and then he turned it into a Suloev stretch. Or at least, no, excuse me. He turned an attempt at a Suloev stretch into a knee bar. And then the knee bar was not enough to get the submission, but Corey stands up and he starts limping. Now, that's the first interesting part, is just how willing Bautista is to try to find offense. I mean, he's got a problem that I think sometimes he gets locked in these offensive rhythms where he doesn't try a lot of new stuff. But like when he actually does, you can see his tool belt. It can be pretty wide at times. So that was really interesting. He goes to go from a Suloev stretch to a knee bar, which, by the way, I don't know if that's a hard transition to make if you actually think about it. But he does it. So there's that. And then in the second round, Sandhagen, I thought, won that one pretty cleanly. I thought he was able to kind of put the fight more on his terms. So like if there's no knee bar in the first, because two of the judges did give the first, I think, to Bautista. That's right. They gave him the first and the third. If there is no knee bar and whatnot, maybe it's a little bit differently that one considers it. But, because the striking was going pretty well for Corey through at least 10 minutes or so. I thought that Bautista did better towards the end of the first round, but then Corey took over in the second with a banged up knee. But by the third round, Bautista was just fucking all over him. I'm looking at the numbers here. Yeah, so one takedown that Bautista had in round one, that eventually led to the Suloev stretch attempt to the knee bar. 0 for 5 in round two. Corey did a really good job. But then in round three, 7 of 11 takedowns by Mario Bautista, 40 significant strikes to Corey's 11, and he knocked him down one time and gets a credit for a sub attempt. Dude, Mario Bautista is perennially disrespected because he had a really, really boring fight with Jose Aldo. He does sometimes tend to be a little offensively one note, or he can get in those rhythms. But when he's dialed in, I just feel like he can do so many things really well now. He knows where to find, at times anyway, good pockets of offense. He is much better defensively on the feet than he was. He was much better offensively, for that matter. He's got, a reasonably good kicking game. He was going after that leg, the left leg of Corey, throughout the course of that contest as well. So there was that too. And again, on the grappling side, to be able to go from a Suloev stretch to a knee bar, that's actually a much more complicated transition than you might imagine. And then in the third round, the wrestling took over too. Like, he is well-rounded. He is very battle-tested at this point. Corey should have been able to win this fight, but honestly, if Bautista is the guy who puts himself in a position to shred your knee before the end of a round, and that makes the fight much more difficult for you, even rallying in the second, the better guy won. The guy who was able to just do more offensive things in more offensive scenarios, who was getting to positions quite literally first. Maybe that is the better guy. I mean, I think the world of Corey Sandhagen, both as a person and as a technician. And it is partly just kind of somewhat of a luck issue that the thing happened, but not really. Like, Bautista put himself in the places he needed to and went for the things that were available to him, and it worked. It worked. Does he razzle dazzle you with what he does? No. To me, it's like a very elite level of like a workman-like game. But dude, an elite level of a workman-like game is pretty good. I mean, that's a tough guy to beat. Bautista has lost to, listen, this is pull up his record here. Bautista has lost to Umar, Trevin Jones, that was 2021, and then Corey, and that's it. Everyone else he's beaten, and he got revenge on Corey this time. And the stat line is clear. He has one knockdown. Sandhagen had none. 114 significant strikes. Corey, 89. Bautista, 8 takedowns. Corey, 1. Bautista, 3 sub attempts. Corey, 0. He just threw more at the problem and was able to get it done as a consequence. I'm not sure where Corey goes from here. He's a little bit older. I don't think this was the end of the world, provided he's not super injured. Bantamweight is tough. I suppose no one's really ever, of his level, is never too far away from doing stuff in big time fights. But this is certainly going to calibrate him to the back half of the top 10, and it's going to put Bautista much closer. I don't know if they're ever going to give him a title shot. He's got a little bit of a, because he lacks that razzle dazzle. I think that's going to be a problem for him. But dude, he's tough. He's tough as shit, and that was not an easy guy to beat, and he did it by the end of the third with authority. And I think you have to respect that. Brandon Royval defeats Loney Kavanaugh. This was an amazing fight. Which one won fight of the night? Yeah, this was fight of the night. Via rear naked choke in the third round. Brandon Royval comes out open stance, right? So southpaw versus orthodox, and he's just jabbing the face off Lonnie. But more than that, he's completely taking over position, getting right in his face, using his length. I think he even got a takedown towards the end of round 1 as well. Just, giving him, I'm going to take control of this fight from the first round, and I'm going to maintain it. Second round comes out, and he gets dropped hard from a counter shot, I think, of a kick, and recovers, but clearly loses the round. And, the kind of counter striking, the sort of slick thing that Kavanaugh likes to do, it showed up. But Royval's kind of hurry up offense and hurry up pressure offense, it doesn't allow Kavanaugh to sit in that kind of a position too regularly. Third round, he goes back out, gets the takedown, I think within 3 minutes and some change, and then eventually finds his way to the back, has to hand fight for a bit. And then once you notice that I'm not going to use this, but once he gets the bicep and then the hand and then the chin seals it. When that chin, BJ Penn used to do this. BJ Penn would feed the hand behind the head and then seal the choke with his hand, right? When you do that, it's a wrap after that, dude. It's a wrap after that. So, Brandon Royval belongs on a list of not just all-time exciting flyweights, but of and I'm not saying you've got to put him Mount Rushmore. It's not what I'm saying, but there should be a group of guys we just consider to be all-time exciting, independent of weight class or era. And I think Royval belongs in that. He just continuously has fight of the nights, and including even fight of the years and round of the years. Rounds of the year. Rounds of the years, because it's multiple rounds, multiple years. He's that guy. For Kavanaugh, I did not think, again, he looked good in the second. The issue for me with Kavanaugh is that Moreno was able to indulge this, but Royval had the right idea. You can't let Kavanaugh sit back and begin to sniper you and then dictate rhythm. You have to take that away from him. So Royval knew that. He knew what the score was. We are going to get in his face and not let him settle. Because once he begins to settle, his counter striking and his accuracy is very good, right? That's when the problems start happening, is he can find you. And even without that, he can find you sometimes. But especially if you give him that, if you give him repeated looks, if you do like BSD shit where I'm just going to come running in, he'll demolish you. You really have to take all of that away. And I thought Royval did a phenomenal job in the first round, mixing it up in the second round, really leaning into the grappling side, playing hurry up offense, pressuring him close to the fence, using the fence for a lot of those takedowns. Just a phenomenal job by Brandon Royval, who's still, again, he's lost to Manel Kopp. He lost to Josh Van. He lost to Pantoja. But okay, those guys are all super good. Royval is still a live dog as I know he's raw dog, but he's like a black horse candidate to me for, getting back to a title shot, or I don't know if the UFC sees him in that regard, but his work speaks for itself. It speaks for itself. And then last but not least, King Green defeats Terrence McKinney via TKO at 4:59. I was watching this on the plane as I had a layover in Miami yesterday. I had a layover in Miami, and then when I boarded the plane, this fight was happening. And I'm watching it, and I'm like, dude, Terrence McKinney is beating the shit out of King Green. Like, just messing him up, man. Completely owning this dude. And then King Green kind of survives, and Terrence McKinney gets him to the ground. He moves to mount. He's getting beat up, but he's surviving. Eventually, he gets back to his feet and then starts landing on Terrence and then hits him with a left hook to the liver, I believe, which sends Terrence crumbling. Now, you can argue that the fight was stopped a little early. It was at the end of the round, and so you kind of, you can kind of be like, give the guy a chance to go to the next round. But I don't know. Like, I don't know what to say about that. Yes, I respect that, but Terrence McKinney is who he is. Like, he's I mean, this is a compliment. He's the Evel Knievel of MMA. Just shoot him out of a cannon and watch the magic happen. And if he wants to be more than that, I'd be happy to see it. But for now, that's kind of been what he's been. And again, this is not an insult. Like, I actually really like Terrence McKinney, and I think that's a fun way to describe what he does. What I would like to see from him, though, is just a little bit a better ability to offer resistance in the face of resistance. Like, so we know he can move downhill on guys, but if they can resist that, can you then offer a second level of resistance to them? I think that's the kind of thing that I'm waiting to see, and I haven't quite seen that yet. For King Green, I mean, dude is iconic. He finally gets the trunks that he wants. He is calling the guy a bitch, and he's punching over his shoulder like this, very mechanically inefficient, and still calling him bitch, and the commentary booth is laughing because they can hear it. He's one of a kind, and that was kind of a one of a kind performance. But I'll just say that, man, I don't know how much Bobby Green has left, but to watch a bit of a career renaissance happen late in his run is kind of fun to see. And you got to feel great for the guy too. He has always been good, but he's never been embraced in the way that he's being embraced now. And it's just fun to see an old dog who's still got, a few tricks up his sleeve, but an old dog just the same, get a chance to do some barking. Good for him. Obviously, Whitaker versus Krylov. We can talk about that if you want. Gable Stevenson, I've got some questions about. Adrian Yanez absolutely fucking demolishing Cody Garbrandt inside of a round. Luke Riley looking really good against Kai Kamaka. Wang Tong defeating Tracy Cortez. We can talk about any of those things if you want. As I mentioned, fight of the night was Brandon Royval versus Loney Kavanaugh. Performance of the night, Paddy Pimblett and King Green. All right. If you got any questions, fire those into the super chat now, and then we shall get to them. Give me a break here for just a moment. I'm thirsty. Okay, one more time. I got to do this one more time. All right, here we go. Perfect Gene, boys and girls. As I mentioned at the top of this broadcast, I'm going to do it again one more time. Our friends at the Perfect Gene are with us now long-term. And as you guys know, I freaking love this partner. Their jeans actually fit me, which is rare for a guy my size. They are comfortable and they look freaking great. The Perfect Gene has just nailed the job of making a jean. They have the look and feel of real jeans, but they move with you. They stretch where you need them to stretch. They don't feel stiff or restrictive. And honestly, they're the most comfortable jeans I've ever owned. That is 1,000% not hyperbole. So you guys understand what the pitch is. They look great. They fit great. You're going to feel great. Get the perfect gene for 15% off with the code LukeLive15. That's LukeLive15 at theperfectgene.nyc/LukeLive15. That's theperfectgene.nyc/LukeLive15. LukeLive15. And then use that same code LukeLive15 for 15% off. Check the link in the description and the pinned comment and go get yourself a pair. Trust me, diggity donks, on this one. Okay, let's get to your questions and see what we can do about that. All right. Connor, welcome to the party. Got a bunch of people who became members here. Vlarik, welcome to the party. Super Fendon, welcome to the party. We funked up, welcome to the party. All right, here we go. JJG says, I feel like that kind of bad loss from BSD can really mess up your career. Can the UFC actually have Conor McGregor main event another pay-per-view after something like that? They're going to have to, because he's still going to be big enough where that's going to make sense. The BSD one, again, he's 30 and he didn't get beaten up. There is still hope there. There's no hope for Conor. As like, oh, I'm going to turn this around. You're not turning shit around like that. It's over. But for BSD, there still is. However, on the Conor side, he has achieved so much celebrity and so much fame that even if that slowly diminishes, it's still going to be pretty damn big. So you're absolutely going to see him. And I know some of the world pays for pay-per-view here in the States. We don't. But yeah, dude, he's going to headline big events. Yes. What a huge mistake by Conor to pull out of the Chandler fight with a broken pinky toe. Lost more time he didn't have to spare, and he'd be out of his UFC contract now. Fight reputation is damaged. Maybe, yeah, maybe he should have done it and win or lose, be out of his deal versus not do it, and now it's later and you're still losing and getting injured, and you're still not free to go pursue Netflix. That's an interesting argument. At the same time, who's to say how that would have gone if he was injured and he couldn't move the way he needed to. Again, the issue is he's just brittle. He used to remark about how durable and rock chinned he is, and he still has a good chin, I suspect. But like, dude, your body just, people don't. It's hard for people to really kind of wrap their head around the reality of aging. That's why, like, I tell you, the donks, like, dudes in their 20s mocking me. It's cool, dude, mock me. Like, if you're in your 20s, enjoy it. But it's like, I'm here from the future to tell you where you're going to end up too. If you make it to 46, you may not look like this, but whatever you look like, it's going to be a lesser version than what you were at 26, and significantly so. That's life. That's the way life goes, and you kind of have to understand and respect and then adjust your life according to those contours. Let me fix something here real quick, if I can. Hold on. Give me just a minute here. Here we go. Let's do that. Let's do. All right. Sorry, I had to do something real quick. My wife was demanding it. She was texting me. Okay, we're good. All right. All right, Nick says, it was so painful watching the willful sports washing of McGregor. Like Poirier said, karma's not a bitch, it's a mirror. Yeah. Yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast, I've got a bigger video coming out on this. I've been really thinking about it while I was on vacation and watching and just being like blown away at how little there was an appetite for inquiry. Partly I've already explained it. I think modern fight fans are so starved for what used to be a more common way to interface with the UFC product that they're just willing to make a series of moral accommodations that I think make us all worse off. But that's the fan perspective. The media perspective in not even addressing it is just so cowardly. It's cowardly. Again, whatever conclusion you may end up coming to, and I think that there are some that are right and some that are wrong, but at a bare minimum, not even being willing to engage with it in good faith, particularly for those who actually interacted with Conor, is such a moral stain on their reputation. Not even being willing to entertain the idea that this is a conversation worth having is is such a revelation of how broken somebody actually is. And frankly, the perverse incentives of working in the industry. I'm going to say it one more time, dude. Nobody forced me into my current position. Like, I elected to be here. And the reason why is because it affords me maximum ability to just talk about what I want to talk to you about, because I think that's actually the most important thing that somebody should be doing is, let me just warn you people out there, like the world is going to be filled with people where you'll watch a car crash and someone's going to be like, you didn't see a car crash. There was no car crash. What car crash? You're going to see stuff like that. And most people will be like, yeah, whatever. I'll just kind of, it's a little weird, but I'll go along with it. Like the emperor has no clothes, sort of deals with a similar kind of shared, willing, but known delusion. Don't give into it. Don't give into it. If you can at all avoid it, don't give into it. I had a low opinion of MMA media before. It's probably as low as it's ever been after a week like this. It's one thing to be like, I don't get involved with politics and to not really be aware of just how malignant a force the current administration is. And that's at least somewhat plausible, depending on the context anyway. It's at least somewhat plausible. But this one is pretty straightforward. And one more time, I'm just saying the reasonableness of having a conversation about it. That's what I'm talking about. Can we get Max versus Paddy? Again, I mentioned this one earlier. I think that one might actually work. I don't know if they want it, but I would love to see that fight, especially because Paddy doesn't have the same kind of wrestling that Charles does, but he obviously has very good submissions and he's tough, and Max is really good, but he's also older and kind of an interesting matchup. I would favor Max to win that one, but that's an interesting one. BSD on your Donk Mount Rushmore? Yes. Fumbled Poirier too. He's so disrespectful of the game. He's so utterly disrespectful of the game. And now he paid for it. Baba Yaga, future top 5, composure and real one-punch power. Which guy was this? Who was Baba Yaga? I forget. I mean, I know what it is in the colloquial sense. Let's see. Oh, Damian Pinas. Yes. Yeah, dude, he looks like his name is going to make him memorable. But yeah, he can thump. He can thump for sure. He beat the bags off of Cesar Almeida with that, had his head kind of, he did what I call testifying in church, when the head goes back and then the hands come up, Brian Campbell voice. Did y'all see Brian's mustache? I was like, wow, Brian, I didn't know Paramount was letting you do pornography on the side. This gentleman writes, as an Irishman, it was disappointing to not watch McGregor get beat up for a couple of rounds. Chandler beats this version of Conor. I mean, he might. Ilya versus Paddy next. I definitely agree on the last one. Does Chandler beat this version? Because I would have not expected that. But now, honestly, maybe. Well, I don't know. Chandler's pretty fucking washed. But, I mean, Conor is brittle. Maybe. Now it's more competitive than I thought it would have been. I'll say that. Luke, thoughts on the passing of Warmonger Graham? Let's save that for the politics channel. I think I appreciate the donation, but we're going to save that for another time. Okay. And I am going to do a live on the politics channel this week. Obviously, I missed a lot there as well. Hello, Graham Plattner. But for today, I don't want to get into it. Karma is a B. You disrespect someone's religion, their wife, and their dead father, things you can't come back from. I mean, but that's old news. I mean, I grant that it's bad. I certainly agree that it's bad, but it's old news. Or at least maybe the Habib win, I should say, was the karmic debt that he had to pay, or that was the bill that ended up showing up in that night. This one to me felt a little bit bigger. This one felt to me like just the way in which he'd been living his life generally. Like he finally had to just look in the mirror and be like, this is what I have become. And there's no going back. I hope we don't overrate Paddy's win. Good win, but lest we forget BSD has some of the worst fight IQ in the UFC. He simply reverted to form. I grant that BSD served it up for him, but I just want to say somebody getting disrespected. And again, I've done plenty of Paddy disrespecting. Somebody getting such an ice cold win when the narrative around them is that they're lesser than and not good enough. I think you should take a moment to respect, like, more than just the symbolism, but the impact of that moment. A few weeks ago, it seemed like the haters were getting to you a bit. Seemed like you felt underappreciated for your work and just being you. Wanted to say you mean something to this community. The world is better with you anyway. It's a very nice message. No, it's not. The issue is not about the haters and the. I mean, I tweeted, for example, about Dana White. By the way, there was a post that went up with Dana White did, like, I think that Friday CBS weigh-in show or whatever it was. And on it, he said, like, there's no hotels available in Las Vegas. And eventually someone put I found out, because they give you if you like or share or comment on any kind of post or tweet that gets community noted, they'll tell you it got community noted. And I had quote tweeted it, and I was like, just open up the Hotel Tonight app and you can see for yourself that that's a lie. You guys ever used Hotel Tonight? It's a great app. If you're ever in a place and you get like, oh, I'm stuck with a layover in, I'll say, make something up, Las Vegas. You can just put in Las Vegas for the night and it will show you all of the available inventory you want. And there was like a shitload of rooms, including at nice places too. Not just the butt fuck in, someplace in the middle of Las Vegas. It was like stuff like good high-end places on the strip. And I tweeted it and people were like coming after me for it. And it was like, they're like, oh, this is so low stakes. And I'm like, I get that it's low stakes. I agree that it's low stakes. I'm not expecting some kind of like gigantic response here. My point is simply that, like, a promoter lying, and particularly trying to lie in a way to like kind of set the tone for what the vibes are, like part of this whole Conor's back whitewashing thing. Like, you should call out promoters and people were like, oh, he's exaggerating, but that's not an exaggeration. That's just false. It's like either it's true or it's not. There are no rooms available. And not only was it not true, it wasn't even close to true. And I agree that, like, pointing it out is low stakes, but the point I'm trying to make here is in that particular case, like, you got a big outsized response from a bunch of people who don't like me, which is fine. That's Twitter. But they were trying to argue it's also low stakes. And I'm like, it can't be low stakes if you guys feel the need to dogpile in defense of a lie. Like, you clearly feel it. So, like, when I interact with people and I get dogpiled because they don't like someone pointing out what reality looks like to them, that part doesn't bother me. The question is not that. The question is, what is the value of what I am doing to an audience that doesn't want to hear? Like, who is the audience for telling the truth, or at least trying to find an approximation of what the truth is within combat sports? Like, who's the audience for that? Because the people who enjoy fictions and think it's better to accept polite fictions, or what they perceive to be polite fictions, rather than even a low stakes thing pointing it out to them that this is not true, and they have an angry reaction to that. Are they the audience for something like this? Are they the audience for, like, guys, we should probably have a conversation about, whether Conor McGregor is a horrible human being, like, and they don't, like, I don't know if they're the audience for that. And if they're not the audience for that, like, where does that perspective go? I don't know. I still don't know what the answer to that is. Adam, welcome to the party. The issue is that MAGA has taken over MMA. They don't care about Conor being a scumbag. Their hero is the residing president of Paydos, Trump. I mean, I definitely think that plays a role. Like, there's anytime someone gets involved, Russell Brand is a great example, where they get in trouble with any number of different acts of personal malfeasance, and the first thing they do is they find God and they find the right wing. And it's because they're trying to launder themselves publicly, and also they know that the right will just go along with it. They'll be like, yeah, we don't care about no movement that places Trump at the front of it cares about the actual moral character of anyone within it. Like, you can't have it both ways. It obviously does not make sense. So Conor did that whole thing. Remember, he's running on this whole he had a whole bunch of stuff he was running on, including anti-immigrant stuff in Ireland and whatnot. It all fizzled too, but I think that's part of it. Like, the moral relativism that they introduce is unique to, or somewhat unique, how to say this, more pronounced on their side than many others. What's up, Luke? Can Paddy beat Justin if he uses BJJ? The problem is the takedown. That's the one area that Paddy does genuinely lack in. Clearly, his subs are lights out. It's the getting the fight to the floor. I think if he cleans that up, it could dramatically raise his ceiling, but that is a bit of a weak point for him. Good day for English sports yesterday. Yeah, Paddy steals the show with his win, and there's still a chance that it's coming home. Now, we all saw the ball hit the camera wires, and the play wasn't stopped, and this ended up having a pretty dramatic effect on the game. So, it's not that England didn't get some luck in a couple different directions, but fair to say, Jude Bellingham's real good. At Conor's age, Jose Aldo had to fight Mario Bautista more than a decade after they have fought now, and the dichotomy between their careers and stories still seems relevant to inspect. This is what I mean. Jose Aldo, when he met Conor, couldn't reach the same peak, right? Because Conor beat him in 13 seconds. But Jose Aldo was able to maintain a high thing. Conor was up and then down. So Jose Aldo is more like a rainbow. Conor's more just like, a triangle. It's kind of like that. Conor could end up like Ricky Hatton. I'm not the one to say if that's good or bad, but it could be coming. Cruz's point at the end was accurate. Cruz was like, the guy was, trying to save his own life by coming back to do this, because financially he shouldn't have to. I mean, I don't know how he spent his money, but financially he shouldn't have to have done this. Dude, the older you get, I can only speak for me. The older you get, man, I found running from my own failures, whether they had ethical dimensions or not, much easier to do when I was younger. The weight of it didn't sink as deep into your burrow into your brain in the same way. And now that I'm older, it's much harder to shake. It's much harder to shake. Like, it sits with you. The weight of it feels bigger. I don't know if he's exactly the same way, but that's been my experience. And when you feel the depth of your own shortcomings or your own failures or your own wrongdoing later in life, and when these facts become more acute, I don't know, it can do a lot to you. How nice would it have been if your neighbor had refrained from mowing his lawn with you out on vacation and waited for you to get back? But he didn't. Conor didn't seem to take this fight seriously. I think he did, and looked over his head in there, and poor strategy with that kick. I mean, the kick was weird. Doesn't have it anymore, but doubt he would turn down a nice payday for publicity. I mean, dude, he might have had a financial incentive even if he was injured, right? He did have a financial incentive even if he was injured, just to get out there and go fight, because he's going to get paid no matter what. You know what I mean? It's not, I don't know if this thing is based on ratings or whatever, but if you're injured and you're going to get paid $30 million to walk, don't you just walk? Sorry if this has been addressed. I'm running late. This will definitely impact how UFC negotiate Conor's contract. Again, people were killing Chael. I really don't understand that. I think that they're destined to break up. If you're a UFC dude, again, he can still sell at the box office, but at some point, dude, you've got whatever life there is in the career of Conor, you've gotten the overwhelming best of it. You don't need all of it. And Conor doesn't want to be there anymore either. What's up, Luke? Hope you had a great vacation. Us donks missed King Donk. Thanks, bud. Welcome back. What were the highlights from your trip? We'll save that one for the live chat, guys. Is this one of the worst results the UFC has ever had? No, they've had worse ones. I think that they're ready to be done with Conor's a little strong. I don't think they see the breakup with Conor as in any way existential, and I think at this point they're right. I'm a Paddy fan, but I didn't think he could beat BSD. Ilya would be favored, but it's no longer impossible to think Paddy can beat him. I don't think that's crazy. I'm going to favor Ilya too, but Ilya's got some big questions to answer, and Paddy looks rejuvenated in a way that seems convincing. 6 months as a member, best 6 months of my life. Only downside is that I've had to change the time of when I cut my grass. Good. That's right. You got to respect what I'm doing. Mario Bautista and Sean O'Malley both moved to Phoenix around 2013 and have been training partners at MMA Lab. Think an awkward conversation is upcoming. That could happen, but I don't know if O'Malley's going to take that fight, you know. UFC might offer it, but I just don't know if O'Malley wants it. Even the first kick looked like it was slow motion. Yeah, he also looked like he had no snap on anything either, you know. In terms of the hype leading up to it and the result of the bout, where does this rank in all-time anticlimactic outcomes in MMA history? This is pretty big. I mean, this is bigger than a lot of other fights that had anticlimactic endings. Like, you know, for example, another one that had an anticlimactic ending would be Randy Couture and Vitor Belfort, where he gets his eyelid ripped. Or you could do what's another one you could do? It was I had it in mind a minute ago. Super anticlimactic in the end. That's sort of like the one that I always go to. But this one, obviously, Conor McGregor's level of celebrity is, you know, greatly in excess of that. So, you could do Andre Arlovsky, Paul Buentello, but you see what I mean? Like, none of these are as big. So this has got to be up there with one of the bigger ones. It's to me less surprising, just given some of the context. It's different when you get guys who are like in their primes, and you get the really weird fast ending. That's true. Again, for injury or something. But this might be one of the biggest under the very peculiar nature of Conor's celebrity. This feeling rivals Tony tripping on the wire. I think his only comeback will be boxing at this point. He isn't built for this. Not anymore. It's over. It's over. Felt bad for everyone last night. Bummer for all. Honest, I don't feel bad for McGregor. I don't have the slightest degree of sympathy for him. I don't think he's the kind of person who is entitled to it. And more to the point, he chose everything about the way his life went through fighting. In fact, he bragged about how in control of it he was. He bragged about how much him and Floyd, remember him and Floyd? Both of them bragged about how in control they were. Both of them bragged about how smart they were. Both of them bragged about how well they understood everything. And then life humbled the fuck out of both of them, didn't it? Are you worried Conor will fall back into the deep end now? No. After finding religion and trusting it to better yourself, when it doesn't help you achieve what you want, you could end up worse than before. You could also end up, if it's real, you could end up more devout than before too. I mean, I think, in my opinion, I don't know this for a fact, that's all just a fucking complete ruse for gullible idiots. So I don't take that seriously to begin with. And I think this guy has a lot he has to work on in his life beyond just fighting. And if he's not willing to do that work, I don't know what kind of sympathy he's entitled to. Do you think Gaethje retires now, or does he fight Arman? I think Gaethje wants another payday. Maybe they do the max one again. I think this makes it more likely he retires. I'll put it that way. Luke, please explain to the mouth breathers why Conor being tried in civil instead of criminal court is not nearly as exonerating as they think. Well, just go to my Frank Greeny interview. The way he explained it was that it doesn't in any way mean that you couldn't win on conviction. It's just that the prosecutors in Ireland they're trepidatious of even involving cases unless there's a bit of a slam, and unless it's a total slam dunk from an evidentiary standpoint. And in this particular case, there were some elements of the case that they felt like, you know, including Nikita Hand's behavior in other respects, that could be shown to a jury and be shown to not win. The problem that that argument ends up having is that when they showed this stuff to actual jurors and to the court itself, yes, they took it into account, and yes, they said that it, you know, created something of a mixed picture, but that ultimately what they determined was that it was not a problem at all in terms of the weight of the evidence. I've made this point before. This case is very easy to understand, and it really comes down to this. I followed the trial. If you follow the trial, what really sunk him was that she shows up to this rape center making these claims shortly, just I think days, I forget exactly how far apart it was, but it wasn't too far apart. she shows up there, and again, they have to, pull her tampon out with forceps, which was unusual, but it was the amount of bruising that she had. She had extensive bruising. Both the doctor and the intake nurse separately noted that when they evaluated her. And when they pressed McGregor's team for like, why was she so bruised? They had no answer. They had no way of saying it. They were like, oh, well, maybe she just partied or blah, blah, blah. They had no way of finding an alternative, which is why, partly with the timeline, they had McGregor's team in the appeal had these two people who were neighbors of Nikita Hand who claimed she was at another place fighting with her boyfriend, and who knows what that might have done. And then when it was time to go to trial, they pulled that out at the very last minute, and now they're all being investigated for potential acts of perjury. Like, this is what I mean, dude. If you follow the trial, there's basic questions about how did this get here? What is your theory of the case? And they had none. She shows up to this thing with like telltale signs of sexual assault, and not just like classic ones, extensive ones. And their case is very straightforward. It's very easy to understand, and it follows a very easy to understand evidentiary flow. And Conor's team had no answer for it. And I think that completely destroyed them. How do you account for this? They didn't know. Any truth to Conor blowing through his money? I mean, can you imagine him and Floyd having just this gigantic fight, and not even 10 years later, they're both, again, I don't know if this is true, but like, if that's the case, less than 10 years later, and they're both broke? Amazing. The only fight the UFC should consider booking for Conor is against Chandler, where it actually feels kind of even. Yeah, you could do it. I mean, who the fuck wants to see that, One last retirement fight for both. Yeah, you could do it that way. I mean, I'm not sure what the appeal is, but you could do it. MMA Media, Submission Radio included, this person writes, summarizing multiple rape accusations and the brutalization of Hand as Conor's personal issues. My understanding is Long Island Luke told me he went on Submission Radio and went into some detail about it, and people were killing him for it. I don't know if that's true or not. People always tell me that other people did stuff, and then I have to go and see it for myself. But yes, I would just say, generally speaking, MMA Media just deciding that, like, hey, we're just, and you know what? It's not even true, because like in the case of Greg Hardy, like, dude, what Greg Hardy did wasn't nearly as bad as like what Conor has been adjudicated to have done. And yet the whole world came crashing down on him. I've noticed that people don't have a problem saying it about Gable Steveson. I mean, there's been some media whitewashing of him too, but like they don't mind, saying horrible things about Gable. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Why would you say it about Gable and about, and again, the crimes are different, and Greg Hardy, but like, you wouldn't say, dude, Poetan, there was a whole CBC report about a series of issues he's had related to violence and sexual violence, potentially in certain cases. And people just pretended like it never happened. They gave him a fucking community award this time. You know what I mean? And there's all this evidence corroborating. It's like very strange to me, like which cases get focused on is like, fuck this guy forever, he's the worst. And which ones people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. I just don't see anything. It's very strange. Is France still your pick to win it all? How could they not be? Who has watched this tournament and thinks there's a better team than France? Is Argentina better than France? No. Is Spain better than France? Spain's close, but I don't think they're better. England, I don't think they're better. Like, France is the best team. Let's say Conor didn't get hurt and pull out. Knowing what we know now in hindsight, how does the Conor-Chandler fight play out if it happened 2 years ago? I'm still going to pick Conor because I just think Chandler's mega washed, but I don't know. Is Conor MMA's Maradona? Wow. Maradona. Maybe. Although Maradona is a leftist hero and Conor is a rightist hero. Maradona was anti-U.S. imperialism and pro-Cuba and stuff like that. But in terms of like the whoring and the and the drugs and like, brief stints. I mean, I don't consider him to be the best ever, whereas Maradona's in that conversation. So it's not quite, but yes, there are some parallels. BSD was a super donk, but does last night's performance raise Paddy's ceiling for you? A bit. It certainly extinguishes concerns I had about him believing he can win, which I wondered if Gaethje had beaten out of him. If so, then to what extent? Okay, I never thought he would be top 5. Yeah. I mean, I think the restoration that last night might do, both for his stock but his own personal sense of self, I actually think that is really impactful. I don't think UFC will hit a $20 million gate again for a decade unless they manage another Conor event or a stadium show with a legendary lineup. I think that's probably right. Although with inflation, one never knows how far away that might be. Theory: Conor didn't expect the co-main to end so fast and didn't finish warming up properly. It's all Paddy's fault. No, an experienced fighter like this, it's not. Even if that's true, it's not an excuse. What is an example of a question that should have been asked to Conor? What conversation is there what conversation is there to be had besides him getting angry or denying? That's up to him to answer. But like, Lou, let's talk about the sexual assault case. You were adjudicated to have done this. You could ask him straight up, why did you do it? That's one question you could ask. Another question is, why did your appeals case fall apart on the day of the actual trial? What do you have to say about being investigated for perjury? Like, you can ask him about the particulars. You could even say, or of course, you can ask him other stuff too. You can ask him, what do you think it means that I went to civil versus criminal? You can ask him things like that as well. But you can interrogate him related to the facts of the case. Why did she show up with bruising? Like, what is the answer for this? Why did they have to remove it with forceps? What is your answer to this? And again, he might have one. He might have good ones for potentially certain cases. I mean, I don't suspect that he does, but at least in theory, perhaps there is one. But the idea that it doesn't even matter, and it's also, are fans right to judge you as being a horrible person, or as being morally deficient, or however you'd like to word it? How should the public feel about someone who is an adjudicated rapist? That's journalism. There's the thing about journalism and MMA where it's who's a journalist, who's not. And a lot of times people don't even know what one is, and they don't know what journalism counts for. Journalism is holding power to account. And if you're not willing to do that, and a lot of people are not willing to do that, and some, by the way, don't even make any bones about it. They're like, listen, I'm not in this for that. Okay. At a bare minimum, you cannot call yourself a journalist. You got to call yourself something else. If you're going to be in a world, dude, this is just the reality. It is very, 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 very difficult to work inside of MMA and then say you can do the work of journalism within MMA while maintaining what is required to hold your place in that community. If you want to have relationships with managers for interviews, let's say you work at a website or whatever, or you want to be able to get invited to things, it requires you to comply with what the powerful in the industry want compliance for. The only way to actually cover that effectively without jeopardizing everything you're building inside of that is to do it outside of it. It cannot be done from the inside. The notion that power can be challenged in MMA within the industry itself, if anything, this weekend lays that completely bare as nothing. It's not true. It doesn't work. If you want to actually be able to challenge the things that powerful people in MMA or anywhere, frankly, for that matter, want you to do, trying to do that while working within the industry that makes those kinds of people powerful to begin with is just horseshit. It obviously is not true. It's not going to work. So I just think you have to understand that. Rashid, what's up? I think if Paddy should improve his wrestling and use it offensively more rather than focusing more on improving striking defense. Well, I mean, he can walk at you bubblegum at the same time. But yes, I agree that improving his wrestling could do wonders for his grappling game. That's a lovely screen name, Jesus. From UFC 300 on, would you rather be Justin or Max? I can't believe I'm saying this, but I guess from UFC 300. Maybe Max, because just the nature of the terrible KO that Justin suffered is uniquely bad, but other than that, it's Justin. Best moment of the weekend was BC destroying Trent Rhinesmith on Twitter. Yes, I did see that. I think I saw that. After Trent tried to recklessly slander his name, it was so bad that Trent had to delete some of his original tweets about BC. I did not read the article in question. I think if I understand it correctly, Trent went after what happened here. I guess BC wrote some article, which I did not read. And then Trent went after it and BC defended it. And I guess what you're telling me is that ultimately won. I think Trent can offer an important, you need people in the outside of the industry to watchdog it. I'm not defending, I didn't read BC's story and I love BC no matter what, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is I hope people treat BC's content fairly. And again, I didn't read the piece in question. But as a general rule, it's important that corporate media, has to be done. Yes, I'll just say this. I love BC, and if him standing up for his content was the right thing and it worked, then I'm glad it ended the way that it did. I'll put it that way. This feels like such an insult to Max to give him a feeble, old, washed, cokehead apist when Max has been the pure representation of an elite disciplined fighter and athlete his whole life. Yeah, but I bet he doesn't mind because the money was great. You know what I mean? I know your point, but I get that. Rest in peace to Lady Graham. All right, we're not going to do this. The old warmongering queen did his thing till the day he croaked. Also, I hope BC enjoyed the Sophie Cunningham cameo. I bet he did. Luke, you failed to mention the fact that Kavanaugh jumped for a guillotine like an absolute donk, which sets the loss in motion. Oh, yes, right. What am I saying? He was working the wrestling too, but yes, trying to jump for the guillotine on Royval. You're so right. Thank you for holding me to account. You're so right about that. Yeah, that was a bad move against Royval. That was a real bad move. Still, Royval's wrestling, he got the takedown in the first in a similar kind of context. But to your point, you're right. I did miss that. King Donk has returned to lord over his degenerate subjects. Donation to your weed fund. Thank you, my friend. And Tuki's summer camp. BC looking like a 70s fan Diggler creep doing whippets in a van down by the river. Sincerely, a West Coast Donk. Yes, he did. I'm going to ask him about that motherfucking mustache. If Mac Energy sponsored you, would you accept? What the fuck is Mac Energy? And no, I turn down sponsors all the time. In fact, it pisses people off who work with me. Luke, do you object to Gable Stevenson versus Buchecha? Only in the sense that, I don't think it. No, but I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't hate it, but I don't think it does anything for me. Gable is still very reckless, and he's going to get chinned if he doesn't change the way he's fighting. But I don't think Buchecha is the guy to really test that either. So you just kind of get more of what we've already gotten, and that doesn't do much for me. It's 2:40 a.m. on a Sunday. I'm relaxing in my yard and listening to you. Why in the world would my neighbor choose this time to mow their lawn? It's a good question. It's a good question. I wonder the same myself. Could you see UFC Conor negotiating to have him fight out his contract in Zuffa? I think anything is possible, but unlikely, but possible. Would give Zuffa a bump and lessen risk of injury for Conor. It's true. I don't think they want to go that direction. I think they want to damage his stock on the way out so that other competitors can't make good use of him. But It's possible. Luke, what did you think about John Garza? He's only 23, but man, he looked awesome. He did. Also, why do you think the other Basharat brother went to PFL? The Basharat brothers are very, very good. There's really no question about it. But, well, John Garza, let me say this. The Basharat brothers are very good, but they're not dynamic finishers. And I think the UFC no one thinks that the Basharat brothers are bad. They're quite good, but there's something more that needs to be done. Garza is good, but like raw. You had Oscar Willis on your other show, MK. That's true. You mentioned nothing about Conor or his past and asked Oscar nothing. Nah, man, you're part of the problem too. Yeah, I thought about this too. It didn't even occur to me because I've had such a long-standing relationship to him. It's a good point. It's a good point. I can understand that. I'm not sure how to navigate a situation where you got a long-standing relationship with one individual person and then what you do after the fact there in that kind of a related role. But it is something that I've given some consideration to going forward. About what the proper role there is too. As I mentioned before, it's not just this. Like I've interviewed Mike Tyson twice, and it never even occurred to me about something like that. And he had a full-on criminal conviction, which didn't go which Conor did not have. Yeah, I think it's a fair criticism. Yeah, it didn't. It wasn't from not thinking. It wasn't from a unreasonable. How do I say this? It wasn't trying to hide. It was just not giving it that full consideration that I think I should have. But I think it's a fair criticism. All right. Paddy reminded me of Charles on Hioki. Oh, sub of the year. Oh, yes. Hatsu Hioki sub. You should see that one where I forget exactly how he did it, but it's the same thing where the guy's facing you and you're sitting and it's locked up and then the leg comes over. It was great. Paddy versus Oliveira is what I'd want to see. Paddy versus Oliveira. That's a tough fight for Paddy, man, because Oliveira is as good as he is at everything, but better. Luke, you're the GOAT. I'm not. Hope the vacation was great. It was. Thank you. Paddy sub should be called the Padlock. Oh, that's a good one. I like that one. Well done. Which thief got away with more, Connie Mack or Gina Carano? I mean, in retrospect, you look back on the Rousey main event and you're like, well, was it so bad in the end? I mean, one was injury and one was just probably the Gina probably the Gina one. Because I don't think Conor was actually injured before. At least the evidence doesn't speak to that. But yeah. So probably the Gina one. Yeah. MK all day. Thank you, Saul. With all the talk about the dark place that Conor was in during his absence from fighting, I can only imagine how much worse he is going to become. Doesn't help that he now looks like Travis Bickle. I mean, he seems to me like he's got a lot of issues. Beyond just the rehab of his knee that need to get examined. And I don't know if he's got the bandwidth or willingness to examine them. Great job on the UFC doc. What did I do? Would you be the next? What would the next one be about? I don't know what we're talking about. Do you see them fast tracking Gable into a title fight in the next two? Fast tracking in the next two, yes, not in the next year. Good to see you still doing your thing with courage and integrity. Doing my best, limited and not without issue, but doing my best. But what UFC doc are we talking about here? Am I missing something? Tristan, welcome to the party. Luke, love from India. Do you think we don't have larger than life crowd pullers in MMA like Conor, so fans hype him after all his wrongdoings? Yes, as I mentioned, I just think it's if you used to be able to get that level of pageantry without any of the baggage, then what did you get? You know what I mean? Sorry, if you used to be able to get that kind of baggage from that level of pageantry, what am I saying? What the fuck? Start one more time. You used to be able to get that level of pageantry without that level of baggage, and now the two come more connected. And I just think it forces everyone into a tougher position. By the way, in The Ultimate Fighter, Jones was an amazing coach, I will say. Gable was undisciplined, but his kicking game looked good. Also, as ex Special Forces, BSD is undisciplined, yes. Tough Jones was an amazing coach. You'll have to take your word for it because I've not seen The Ultimate Fighter. Gable was undisciplined. His kicking game did look good. The snap on his kicks was real nice. Maybe you don't think it was sufficient, and that's your criticism, but Conor was asked about the case at Media Day. I did see that. That was something. He called himself an innocent man. Okay, but at least they had a conversation, right? At least somebody asked it. You got a call. You got a response. People can make up their mind. That, to me, worked a little bit better, There's at least something to be said for that. Would a Topuria versus McGregor fight at year-end catapult Ilya to superstardom? Or should Conor fight Chandler instead? Would Topuria versus McGregor fight? I don't know if it would, assuming the fight was reasonably competitive and Conor was back to some kind of reasonable state and turned in a reasonable effort, and then Ilya just beat that, there would be certainly something that would be beneficial. But like catapulting to superstardom, I don't know if that is on the table. It would do good for him, a lot of good, real good, more good than many other opponents. But that, I don't know if it does that for him. Chael Sonnen versus John Jones was anticlimactic, yes. Although you got to finish in that one. That was not. John had the injury, but he still won. I don't feel bad for Conor at all. Bill came due and he paid it. For Max, how likely would it be he could be three-way champ? I just don't think that's very likely. I don't think it's very likely at all. This whole fight week with the religious banter just seems like McGregor was playing a character. Ultimately, only he knows. Only he knows if it really is a thing. It doesn't seem very convincing to me, but one never knows. Religion is not something which can whitewash wrong. Karma overnight. Karma is a bitch and it comes back. Good, good, bad, bad, and none escape the law. That seems about right. Mystic Floss, thank you. Luke, I'm cutting my lawn right now while listening to this. We can exist in harmony. We can be as a union. Hingle. BSD, Conor, Donkalayev, Don Kazak, Don Kazka. I can't even, my brain is not working. I can't even think of it. I went to bed last night at like 3 because of travel and everything. First team, all donks. Yes, these are all donks in general. We did this one already. It's very funny. How do you refute performative religious types? It depends. I don't know if you refute them. I mean, if they're performative enough, like it just lasts. Like you can do what Piers Morgan did, where he had Russell Brand on his show and he like implored him to find a particular passage in the Bible that really was impacting for him in a context. And, he couldn't really do it. Like he did, like he was faking this. Like, so you can expose like the connectivity between themselves and what they claim. That's one way to do it. Another way is just simply ignore it, or, if it is phony, then it will show up in other ways. And then you can call that out too. So, but like on some level, some refutation isn't really possible, Does Max wait for Conor or sees what else is next? If he waits for Conor, he's making a huge mistake. I think he's eventually going to see what's next. Hope UFC does Gaethje Armin. I wouldn't hate it. And Paddy Ilya the same day. That'd be great. Like a Final Four at lightweight. That'd be sick. I'd be sick. I'd be all in favor of that. That's cool. That's a great idea. Look, what would successful engaging with Conor's transgressions by the media last like? I mean, we kind of went over this one as well. Again, I want to explain something. It's not that you have to go on there and be like, you can. There's a range of possibilities. It's this idea that like, it's the notion that like on some level, at some point, and we're all, me included, in the long history of my career and then even more recently, we're all, it doesn't need to be every single time that we do it or in every single instance that we do it. It's the idea that like there was a class that just decided that there was no conversation to be had about it, that there was nothing to talk about. And it's like, dude, the guy went from like something of a hero in Ireland to like a villain. And even just discussing that, even just discussing that is was something a lot of people didn't want to do. Now, some did, of course, Pete C. Carroll, and there were some other ones as well. You know, that part is the whole thing. And again, I think there's a lot of criticism to go around in a lot of different directions. My own history with it is by far not perfect, but I'm at least efforting in a direction that I just want us to be able to look at reality for what it is: complicated, messy, weird, in contradiction, uncomfortable, and at least be able to talk honestly about all of these different things to the extent that we can. Right? I think that's the part, that last part is missing. It's just not, you don't have to go to the bank teller and be like, hey, I'd like to withdraw $100 and be like, hey, let's talk also about Conor McGregor. There can be, if you want to have coverage where, hey, on Friday's MK, we just did fight coverage. Like we just, there was no broader conversation. And I think in that particular sense, that's probably just fine. But at some point, there has to be some kind of reconciling with what we're all doing here. And how that looks can be uneven and it can be messy, but the effort, I think, is the thing I think is missing. Luke, you're the voice I love to listen to on Sunday after a major, I thought it was going to be another lawn mowing joke. Major event, whether it's after the White House event or just a regular fight night. I'm always fascinated by your take, not in a gay way though. Okay, well, I appreciate that in the donation. Thank you. Del Taco is the shit. I love Del Taco. What moment of the Gable-Stevenson fight would you say most exemplifies him? The lightning fast sprawl, that was an amazing sprawl. When he was shot on, or when he jumped on top of Elisha when he saw he was rendered unconscious. The sprawl was great. The front kicks were great. It's just he just plows into people. And yeah, that's how you fight on the regional scene. You can just overwhelm people like that. But against better types, and Ellison wasn't that on Saturday, but against better types, you can definitely get in big trouble doing that. He's got to clean that up. Will McGregor fight again? I think he will fight again, but when and under what circumstances, I do not know. It's rich for Conor to criticize Khabib for not granting him a rematch after dominating him when Conor never gave Aldo a rematch. Partly that's a result of moving up in weight, Partly that's a result of moving up in weight, but yeah. I understand the claim, but at the same time, like, Khabib had his career. He got out when he wanted to get out. He didn't owe Conor anything. Shout out from Southeast DC. Thank you, Ian. Appreciate you. Kind of ironic how this technically makes Max the third person with KOs in 3 weight classes, along with Conor and Cannonier. That's a weird stat, though. It's like, it's impressive, but then, like, when you see the group, it's like, I'm not sure what to make of what that means. I mean, it's impressive. But, like, I don't know. Can't wait to hear your homeboy in MK that was so sure Paddy was going to lose. Boy, what the hell is up with that avatar? I thought of him when I watched BSD donk it out. You mean Danny? But Danny won't be on Monday. So we'll have to do that at a later time. Since they confused Shakur and Crawford, who do you think they would have confused you with? Fucking Santa Claus? I would say you kind of favor either Brad Pitt or Denzel. I don't favor either of them motherfuckers. I favor Santa Claus. Yeah, dude, Dana White's rant on his own team being bad at getting celebrity names, it was actually a very good Dana rant. Because his point was, like, they just built this, like, arena on the White House lawn. They did all this production shit. They got flyovers. They've got light show. They got fireworks. They got the president's band. They got all this stuff ironed out. And then they call Bud Crawford Kendrick Lamar. And then they call Shakur Stevenson. Who was it? It's one of the guys who played the NBA. I forgot. An NBA player. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing, fellas? Chances that was a kamikaze mission. I mean, people are saying that, like, oh, he was injured and this was just a way to kind of get it over with. It's a hypothesis. I don't know how good of one it is, but it's a hypothesis. Baffling were those kick attempts when he threw his knee was blown. Wait. Baffling. Oh, yeah. He wanted out but didn't want to pull out. I don't know. I mean, yeah, well, if you pull out, you don't get paid. So, I mean, I can't dismiss the theory outright, but I wonder about it. I certainly wonder about it. All right. That is it. Sorry, guys, I couldn't do this live. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the support. I appreciate the criticisms. I appreciate it all. Monday's MK will be tomorrow. I'm going to advance some of this stuff. We're going to have a good time. So be on the lookout for that. Let's see what else. And then we're going to have some more coverage during the week because there's still obviously quite a bit to get to. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thumbs up if you haven't. Subscribe if you haven't. Perfect Gene if you haven't. And I'll see you guys tomorrow on MK. All right. Until then, stay frosty. Bye.